Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name's Renee LaValle McKenna, and I bring my 30-plus years as a recovering addict, ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on all things psychology, spirituality, and personal growth. And today I want to talk about neediness and love. As humans, we all have needs, wants, and desires, and we all have the ability to give and receive love. And for each of us, relationship with others, relationship with ourselves, and particularly intimate relationships call up our own unique configuration of need, want, desire, and love. And depending on how we mix those ingredients together, we can create a delicious, nutritious meal that's fulfilling and beneficial to everyone, or we can create an indigestible mess. I've done both more than once, and so I want to share my experience and my perspective on how to manage and measure out these particularly potent human ingredients of need, of want, of desire, and love. I find physical metaphors for non-physical reality very helpful, and I also love to cook. And whether we're consciously aware of it or not, we could understand that we are always cooking and preparing the meal of our own life, particularly in our relationships. What are we serving up for dinner? With our lover, with our family, with our coworkers and friends? So what does cooking have to do with relationship, with neediness, and with love? If we look at meal preparation as a metaphor for our relational life, stay with me here. Do you like to be the cook, or do you eat whatever's put before you? Do you openly and gratefully partake of what others provide for you? Or do you tend to notice all the things you don't like about the meal first? Do you need to be in control, always deciding what the menu will be? Or do you prefer that everybody shows up with their own meals and just eats sitting together things they prepared? Noticing how we show up, becoming aware of what we want, clear about what we need, and intentional of what we want to bring are the ingredients for conscious relationship in all areas of our life. Being fully conscious takes a lot of work, but cleaning up a smelly mess takes a lot of work too. So it depends on what kind of work you want to do. Having made lots of smelly messes, which I historically always want to blame on the other person involved, it took a while before I noticed that the common denominator in all my relationships was me. And so the patterns in those relationships, and we all have patterns in relationship, were mine, whether I was aware of it or not. And when we become consciously aware of something, we can change it if we want. In my family of origin, neediness and love were really blended together. All of the adult women in my father's life, his mother and his two wives, one of which was my mother, were fairly weak, sickly, needy, manipulative women. My opinion. And they used their neediness and sickliness as a way to control the men in their lives and have security. And my mother, who was married more than once as well, had a relational pattern where the men needed to take care of her, and that gave them a sense of purpose and security, with my mother's neediness kind of running the show, whatever the need of the week might be. So there's not a lot of modeling of what I understand as mature, healthy love today. And so the dynamic that I internalized was, I have needs, and it's other people's job to fill them. And they have needs, and it's my job to fill their needs. And fulfilling each other's needs was what I equated with love. I have come to understand that neediness is not love. In fact, neediness can kill love, and separating out the two is like clarifying the ingredients I'm bringing to the meal I'm looking to prepare. Now, in English, we only have one word for love, which is fucking ridiculous. In Greek, there are 8 words for love. Eros, which is romantic, passionate love. Philia, which is intimate, authentic friendship. Ludus, playful, flirtatious love. Forgive me if you're Greek and my pronunciation sucks. I'm doing the best I can. Storge, unconditional familial love, philautia, which is self-love, pragma, committed companionate love, and agape, which is empathic universal love, or love for everyone. And my personal favorite, mania, obsessive love. My favorite definition for love is to extend oneself for another's spiritual growth. Love in its most mature form is what we bring to relationship, not what we take. In fact, that can be a really easy way to separate out the ingredients of love and neediness. Many of us go to relationship for what we hope to get out of it, and that is generally a recipe that will fail. If we want true intimacy and love, which most of us do, if you're willing to settle for security and do the neediness trade, which is also called codependency that I just described, where each person is half a person and the other person fills in the other half for them, and somehow together they merge and make a whole person. That's kind of the old world version of relationship, which has worked very well for survival for a few millennia. But I believe as a species, we are evolving out of that now, particularly where women have the ability to own property and vote. And men are being called into greater consciousness of their emotional, relational, spiritual selves. One of my favorite spiritual teachers, Rupert Spira, he's an English potter, has this amazing YouTube video. I'll leave a link to it in the show notes about trust in relationship. And someone asks him about trust in their partner. And he basically says, putting your trust in another human is not a good idea. That we do best to grow in our trust of the universal life force because people are fallible and all things are impermanent. And on some level, we know that. And that base insecurity that we feel is grounded in truth. But it's not grounded in ultimate truth. And this doesn't mean that we don't have honesty and integrity in our relationships. But that deeper need for security and fulfillment, for trust, needs to be placed on a spiritual plane on the ground of being, rather than a fallible human. He's English and he says he would like to change the wedding vows of the Church of England, and instead of promising to love and honor and obey, to look dead in your partner's eyes and say, I don't need you. And what freedom does it open up if we bring the neediness we have to the universal life force, to the God or goddess of our understanding, to open vulnerably, to have those needs met through the village in which we live, rather than hoping that it will come from this particular person that we have chosen, who has their own unresolved emotional needs, that like our own have nothing to do with us. They existed way before we meet each other, and yet we hope the other person will solve them. If you would be different, I would be better. That was the way I approached relationship for much of my life. And now I understand that if I'm different, this will be better. An intimate relationship is a cauldron for personal growth. To love another person is to accept them unconditionally. Am I willing to offer to my partner what I want them to offer to me? If I want to feel appreciated, attractive, important, cared for, am I willing to offer that to my partner? What are the ingredients I'm bringing? And it is incredibly fruitful to look at all the things I want them to do for me and to let them off the hook, to take responsibility for my own needs. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not an energy exchange in a relationship. I'm divorced twice because things worked for a while and then they didn't work anymore. But it was actually in taking responsibility for my own needs, wants, and desires, which are all fine, that ultimately I decided to leave both of those marriages. And there were periods of time in both of those relationships where my needs, wants, and desires were met. And they certainly both helped me to learn a tremendous amount about myself. And so how do I care for my own needs? What's my love relationship with myself? Am I even aware of what they are? Can I clarify them? And then ask for them to be met, not just from my intimate partner, but from all those different type of love relationships in my life. In intimate relationship, I have made a commitment to stay in my best adult self. There were times in my life where I could be so nice to the guy at 7-Eleven and I'd come home and treat my partner like crap. Now, I'm still nice to the guy at 7-Eleven, but I've tried to flip that around and treat the people who are closest to me in my most loving form. What do I bring into the love relationships in my life? In work, with my children, with my friends. Perfectly imperfect in all of that, trust me. And as I become aware of my needs, and we all have them. Life is a conversation. It's a breathing in and breathing out. We eat food and we use the nourishment of that food to power us in the world. We need to take things in. If we're depleted or deprived, we're starving in some way, not operating on all cylinders. Healthy receiving is imperative, but we have to know where to receive from and what we're actually hungry for. Having explored the department store of addictions in my life, I had a terrible relationship with my own needs. And I had no idea what they were. I wished they would just go away. So I medicated them with drugs and alcohol. I tried to fill my internal voids with food, with sex, with the approval of other people, and with my own will, trying to make things be the way I thought they should be. If everybody would just do what I wanted, things would be okay. That didn't work too good either. So understanding what my needs are and taking responsibility for meeting them, not all within myself. Again, I used to think I was a low-maintenance person because I didn't want to have a lot of needs, primarily because as a child there was no hope of them being met. But as I've become more conscious of myself, I'm actually a fairly high-maintenance person. I need a lot of input because I have a lot of outflow. And there's no way one or two people could fill all those needs. I have a need for connection with nature because that's my primary place I plug in to universal life force. I have a need for solitude, a relationship with myself, just to be quiet, to journal, to think. I have a need for nourishing information, so I have some favorite things I like to read. I have a need for companionship, a need for fun, creativity, playfulness. I have a need for sexuality, an affectionate touch. I have a need to be of service in the world, to feel productive, like I have something of value to bring. And although I've written a book and I have a podcast, my relationship with meaningful service started when I was cleaning houses. And I cleaned houses for 12 years, and scrubbing people's toilets, cleaning their kitchens was one of the most gratifying jobs I ever had. People really appreciated what I did. And I felt good about that because I did an excellent job. I have a perpetual need to feel my own progress. I continue to do my own therapy work as I do work with other clients. And when my needs are met, and they change all the time, it's not a static thing. What I need at one period of time may be very different from what I need at another period of time. And that's the work of being fully conscious about myself, taking responsibility, of being my own healthy parent or caregiver, to pay attention to myself. And when I take responsibility to care for my own needs, to be open to receive from others and from the world, then I'm able to show up in my loving relationships in my best adult self, and to be able to extend myself for that person's spiritual growth. And to share my process intimately with them, to allow them to know what's happening with me, to share my needs with them. And some of those needs may be within that relationship, but a lot of them are not. So need is about receiving, and love is about giving. And most of us need to grow in both of those areas. I know I do. So I challenge you to consider what your needs are and how can you take responsibility for those needs being met. What do you need to do or change in your life today to gather the ingredients for the recipe that you're creating? And what do you bring to the table for the people that you love? What are you serving up today? Neediness or love? If you like this podcast, please consider leaving 5 stars and a positive review. Grateful to my supporters on Patreon. And if you're interested in finding out how spiritual psychology or my 3-month mentorship might benefit you in your life, send me an email, info@ reneemckenna.com. And you can find my book and workbook, Allies and Demons, Working with Spirit for Power and Healing, on Amazon. Blessings on your path until we meet again. This is Renee LaValle McKenna for Spiritual Psychology.